Our school had organized a trip to the zoo, and almost everyone from our small school was going. The bus ride took over an hour, and we were all excited about a full day away from classes. I was 8 years old then, one of the youngest kids on the trip. The day started normally enough. We spent the morning looking at various animal exhibits, and then we took a break for lunch. After lunch, while others went off to see the plant exhibits, my friend Matt and I decided to go back to see the animals. We headed straight to the sea lion exhibit. To our surprise, a zoo worker approached us and asked if we wanted to help feed the animals. We were thrilled and eagerly agreed. He led us through a door and down a dimly lit, narrow hallway. The excitement of being behind the scenes was palpable. As we followed him deeper into the zoo, we entered a room that was barely lit. The worker told us it was where they kept the food and asked us to wait. He then stepped out and we heard the door click shut and lock behind him. Instantly, a sense of dread crept over us. I ran to the door and tried to open it, but it was locked tight. It was a solid, heavy door that neither of us could budge. We pounded on it and shouted, but it felt like we were in a soundproof box. Time passed slowly, and no one came to our rescue. Suddenly, we heard a faint scratching noise coming from the corner of the room. We turned and saw something moving in the shadows. The light was too dim to make out what it was, but the scratching grew louder, and the movement became more frantic. We backed away, our hearts pounding in our chests. After what felt like hours, the scratching stopped abruptly. We dared to inch closer to the corner, straining our eyes in the darkness. Just then, the room was flooded with a sickly greenish light from a flickering bulb overhead. The corner was empty, but the air felt colder, and an eerie silence enveloped us. We waited, our nerves on edge. Eventually, we heard footsteps approaching the door. Relieved, we pounded on the door again, shouting for help. The door creaked open and another zoo worker stood there looking puzzled. We explained what had happened and she seemed genuinely surprised. As we stepped out into the dimly lit hallway, the worker led us back towards the main part of the zoo. It was already getting dark outside. She told us everyone had been looking for us for hours. Just as we neared the exit, we heard a loud crash behind us. Turning around, we saw the door to the storage room we had been locked in was wide open, and the same greenish light was spilling out, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The worker's face went pale, and she hurried us out of the zoo. We made it back home safely, but the incident haunted us. Later, we found out that the worker who had locked us in was never found. They said he had been acting strangely and was suspected of doing something sinister. A few weeks later, I had a nightmare about that day. In my dream, I was back in the storage room, and the scratching noise started again. This time, a shadowy figure emerged from the corner, slowly approaching me. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart racing, but the scariest part was yet to come. A year later, I stumbled upon an old newspaper article about the zoo. It mentioned a series of mysterious disappearances of children that had occurred years before our trip. The dates matched the day we were locked in that room. They never found the children, but the scratching noise and the greenish light were mentioned in every account. Do you believe the figure in the shadows was one of those missing children, trying to warn us or seeking revenge?